This concept of externalities is closely related to the tragedy of the commons, named such by Garrett Hardin. The tragedy of the commons refers to the idea that open access resources are depleted at too fast a rate. Again, the lack of property rights leads to overconsumption from a social perspective. The typical example of the tragedy of the commons are open access fisheries. Unrestricted access would lead individual fishermen to overconsumption when judged from this social perspective, because the individual fisherman does not take the external effects of stock depletion fully into account. The benefits of additional catch are private, but the cost of stock depletion are shared between all fishermen. This neglect of the cost of stock depletion on others makes it individually rational to keep fishing after the social optimal caught has already been surpassed. Hardin argued that the commons were bound for tragedy because any individual resource-saving behavior would eventually be consumed by someone else. He argued that rational users will draw from the commons until the marginal benefits from doing so no longer outweigh private marginal costs, and thereby decreasing all rents from fishing for the collective. Indeed, most open access fisheries, such as those in international waters, have seen catch increase beyond sustainable levels. Myers and Worm show rapidly declining fish stocks in nearly all regions where industrial fisheries were introduced. That is, the population of big hunters such as shark or tuna are reduced to less than 10% of the pre-industrial numbers. Hardin's proposal to address the tragedy of the commons focused on property rights. In the context of fisheries, this cap and trade scheme is referred to as individually transferable quotas, ITQs, and nowadays is relatively widespread. Steffens describes how individually transferable quota show encouraging performance in comparison with other forms of regulation. The example of the Pacific halibut fishery is illuminating. Open access had led to a gradually diminishing stock throughout the 1970s. In an effort to reduce the harvest, the season was first reduced from 125 days in 1975 to 25 days in 1980 and then just to 2 days in 1994. The result, of course, was more effort expended in a shorter time. Overcapitalization of the fisheries was rampant. By 1994, crews remained out for the entire 48 hours of the season, leading to high rates of injury and even mortality. Due to the rushed fishing, the bycatch of other species was exceedingly high, and as was so-called ghost fishing from abandoned nets. An ITQ system was established in 1995. The season length increased from 2 days to more than 200 days. Safety problems were diminished. Bycatch was reduced by 80%. Ghost fishing losses fell by 77%, and the quality of fish in the market increased. Experiences with individually transferable quotas are not unambiguously positive. Increased profitability is often accompanied by more inequality, and although many stocks have shown partial recovery, fish stocks are often maintained at suboptimal low levels. A literature review by Hosino and colleagues summarizes that economic and sustainability outcomes are generally positive. Social and governance outcomes are often negative. Moreover, one could also ponder about the ethics of trading uncaught fish. See Paulson for more on this. Maintenance of too small a stock can occur when basing catch quota on current population levels. That is, Myers and Worm warn that the rapid losses of fish biomass create the risk of shifting baselines and setting quota based on inefficiently low stock levels. For anyone who is unfamiliar with this concept of shifting baselines, I recommend the TED Talk by Enrique Sala. To celebrate the 50th anniversary of Hardin's publication, Boyd and colleagues collected a series of letters showing the diversity of the commons problems and progress with the governance since. The letters reflect that apart from overgrazing and overfishing, the tragedy of the commons can be recognized as leading to global climate change and the buildup of antimicrobial resistance. The tragedy is also helpful to explain the excessive amount of fertilizer and pesticide use, and even in explaining the rise of monoculture farming.